What is national integration? It is first and foremost emotional feeling that binds all individual citizens of this country into one of the great nations. The Indian society is essentially plural with immense diversities of language, culture, local customs and traditions in food, dress, family life and social intercourse and religion. It is this immense diversity that often tempts people to regard India not as a country but as a continent or a miniature world and makes Indian life a grand, variegated mosaic of peerless beauty. This is our great inheritance which few other countries can boast of, and we must do all we can preserve its salient and beneficial features. But if we have to live and grow as a nation, we must make every citizen of this country realize the basic underlying unity in all this apparent diversity, and we must also strive to eliminate or reduce to the minimum the divisive forces of communalism, regionalism, and linguism that tend to disrupt or cloud this unity. National integration may be said to have been achieved when the positive and unifying forces resign supreme in national life and the negative and divisive trends are controlled, if not totally eliminated. This is our goal. It is in this direction that we have been moving throughout our long history. It is in a way a long and endless journey to a great destination. As with liberty, eternal vigilance is the price that we have to pay for national integration as well. The binding together of all citizens, in spite of all their diversities, into one nation has to be attempted in several directions. It is not a single strand, but a nation union of several strands which will determine the strength of the national fabric. National integration will therefore have to be positively sought through political, economic, and social development, through education, through a decentralized, just, and fair administration, and through the generation of confidence and a feeling of security among the minority groups. Each of these aspects diverse some examination. To begin with, national integration is a highly political issue. It is the responsibility of the political system to keep the country together and to provide the leadership of strengthening national integration in all walks of life. The Indian National Congress provided this an essential cohesion for the last 90 years. This has been its great service to the people. The relationship between national integration and socio-economic development is also equally close and in fact as mutually interdependent as the chicken and the egg. National integration, which is needed for the very survival of a nation, is a precondition for development because India must live before India can grow. At the same time, how can feelings of national integration survive for long in a situation of great poverty where nearly half of the entire population lives below the poverty line and where there are large disparities in income between one social group and another? We must therefore strive our best to abolish at least the government in the organized industry and in the public sector corporations whose income and perquisites are well above the general economic level of the population. On the other hand, we have large masses of very poor people living in urban slums, small and marginal farmers and landless agricultural laborers in rural areas who are unemployed or underemployed, whose incomes are very low and who cannot even look forward to two square meals a day for most of the year. I know this from my personal experience because I have lived for last 6 years in rural areas and worked as a farmer. How can we hope to have a cohesive society or national integration in a background of such glaring socio-economic inequalities and injustice? We must therefore strive to bring about rapid socio-economic development and social justice. This will create a healthy and hopeful atmosphere in country and reduce the inevitable consequences which extreme disparities generate. Greater and more rapid socio-economic development will follow. It is this golden cycle we must try to establish, the creation of conditions in which every citizen may be effectively involved in the administration processes is yet another aspect of national integration. We must endeavor to reorient the administration so that the services are democratized and made more responsive to the needs and aspirations of the common man. It is also necessary to ensure that the common man is assured justice and fair play in all matters which affect his daily life. Even more important are the reforms which will decentralize authority from the center to the states within the constitutional framework and without in any way endangering the fundamental unity of the country. The center and the states are not big and small brothers but joint partners in national development. Even more important is a devolution of authority and responsibility right down to the present centralized system where fewer people tend to take the basic decisions for the common man. Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, I am indeed grateful to the House for their constructive, cooperative, and creative approach, and particularly for lifting the whole debate without in any way bringing in party politics in so far as the export import aspect of the Commerce Ministry is concerned. It has been treated to be very much vital for the national economy, and naturally, I do treat the various suggestions they have been put forward, including the criticisms, as a healthy sign. I have no doubt that these suggestions will help me in further improving the working of my ministry. Sir, certain issues have been made out by the honorable speakers, and particularly these questions have been put to me. What is the exact strategy of the government? How does the government look at the whole commerce ministry, at the export trade and the import trade? It is in this context that I felt that I should spell out the policies in a very precise form, and the House will please bear with me if I read to that extent a part of my speech, and afterwards I shall take up the suggestions from the honorable members. Sir, Ministry of Commerce has a very important role to play in the economy of the country. The export production efforts, the import and export policies, our attitude to international trade policy matters are integral components of the government's overall developmental strategy of promoting growth with social justice. It goes without saying that to perform its task effectively, the Ministry of Commerce and the organizations and agencies under it, as also its representatives abroad from a well group manned by honest, sincere, and dedicated persons. Soon after I took charge of this ministry, I had to take urgent measures to cleanse and reorganize the ministry. Those persons about whom there were reasons to believe that they placed the consideration of themselves or other individuals above the interests of the country had to be relieved of their responsibilities, and steps have been taken to find suitable replacements. The internal working of the ministry has also been restructured with a view to increasing its efficiency. I am also presently engaged in the task of examining ways and means of strengthening our commercial representation abroad so as to serve our trade interests better. Sir, I suppose this was a good policy which was also appreciated by the honorable members. Sir, let me take this opportunity to outline the basic thrust of our policies which derive their logic from the government's commitment to achieve full employment of our precious human resources as rapidly as possible and to accelerate our progress in the path towards economic self-reliance. With our view with our new priorities in order to meet the necessary import needs of our growing economy, we reiterate our commitment to the goal of rapid export expansion. As honorable members are aware, for the current year our export target is placed at rupees 5700 crores, amounting to a growth rate of our export as high as 12 to 13%. Sir, the basic element of our new approaches are to shift our export mix towards the dynamic exports. These dynamic exports will be the leading sector of export expansion. These leading sectors are the ones in which we have long-term competitive advantage and whose export growth can be sustained without the help of long term artificial crutches. These leading sectors of export expansion are engineering, goods, ready made garments, leather manufacturers, handicrafts, and technology intensive products. Example, exports of consultancy and engineering services and project export.